Good evening and welcome to this night's special edition of StormCast. I'm Joey Pisani, CEO of Extreme Weather Videos. Great to have some of our team members with us tonight. We have
Good
Steven
evening and
with us.
welcome to this night's special edition of
Sorry about that. We have Steven with us. We also have Sarah with us, and we have David Stevens up in Montana, Sarah in Indiana, and David is in the Cincinnati, Ohio area. We'll also have some other guests joining us as we get later into the broadcast, but want to get right to it. Hurricane Matthew, big story we got going on. It's going to be making impact across portions of Haiti tonight, and then also eastern Cuba overnight. And then we're going to see it really start making impacts in the Bahamas tomorrow. And then obviously a lot of people, I'm sure you've seen, that cone has shifted west. We're expecting Hurricane Matthew to still be a major hurricane off the east coast of Florida. A Florida landfall is absolutely not out of the question. So a lot to really analyze. And Dan, welcome. Glad to have you with us tonight,
Hello.
friend. How are you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing pretty good. So yeah, I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on Hurricane Matthew? I mean, this is the first major hurricane of this season. I mean, so it's pretty significant.
It is.
We'll start with you, Steven.
I think, I never seen a hurricane in real life, but I think it's going to be pretty crazy with all the people getting ready to be prepared to evacuate if they need to. I did see Jamaica today on the news, and it was pretty bad. I mean, it was like pretty like knee-high, like leg-high waist water, and they're just going through it, pushing vehicles through the water. I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah, I mean,
That is crazy.
That's definitely going to be a really big threat going forward. The flooding rain, you bring up an excellent point. As we know, Haiti, very mountainous area, eastern Haiti, very mountainous. So when you have all that heavy rain falling, we're just going to see all that rainfall just run down the mountains and flood the areas and the towns below. So definitely going to be pretty dangerous flooding situation. I mean, we could see up to 2 feet of rain in some places.
Yeah.
So that's definitely going to be pretty significant. Does anyone know anyone that's down in Jamaica or Haiti or Cuba at all? Just kind of curious.
No, not me.
I know I have some friends that have family in Jamaica. I'm not sure exactly what part they're in, but they do have family down there. Those that are watching our YouTube live feed, feel free to leave your comments, questions on the YouTube page. We'll be able to see those. Be glad to answer those here throughout the broadcast. Also, if you're watching on Facebook Live, you can do the same thing. Just leave us your comments or questions. So, Sarah, I mean, I know tornadoes are really more your thing, but what are your thoughts? I mean, what do you think about Hurricane Matthew potential U.S. impacts? I mean, if you were in Florida, what would your advice be?
You know, when I chase, and of course, I'm speaking really thunderstorms and tornadoes are my specialty, like you said. But if I had the opportunity to chase a hurricane that was expected where it's expected, I think I would venture up to Myrtle Beach. I don't know why, but I think my instinctive vibe is leaning that way. So I'm anxious to see pictures. I'm a spiritual person, so I'm very quick to dive right into prayer for anybody who is potentially impacted by this.
Yeah, excellent point that you bring up there with Myrtle Beach. I think that would be a really good target location. If I go out, I'm probably going to head out. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it that far up, but I'll probably head out to the Charleston area is where I was thinking. It's within drivable range, only about 4.5 hours or so. It all depends on if I can get Saturday off work. I got to talk to my boss about that tomorrow. Then I'll rent a car and head out there Friday night after I get off work.
Yeah,
And,
I think I would look at all the models that you've got available and just kind of make round it out, make an average, and head toward the middle, and then you can make a judgment call as the time draws near.
yeah, and it's really interesting too because some of the models they all have a little bit of variation in the timing of any potential U.S. landfall along the Carolina coast. On Monday, some of it has it making landfall Monday morning, whereas some have it making landfall on Monday afternoon or even late Monday afternoon. Logan, good to have you with us tonight. Thanks for joining.
Hey
So
guys.
what are your thoughts on Hurricane Matthew? I mean, if you were chasing Hurricane Matthew, where would you head?
Well, I will be. It's coming anywhere close to us. I'm not really sure that's yet. Probably looking at somewhere in the Carolina coast, but I mean, Florida can't really be ruled out yet. I think
When are you headed out?
I think the best probability is probably that it stays offshore, just offshore. But even that solution, as the wind field expands, is probably going to put some hurricane force winds onto the coast somewhere.
Yeah, I think that's really, I don't know if you've been looking at some of the different models, but for example, like you were saying, once it gets north of the Bahamas, it seems that the overall structure of the storm kind of begins to expand, and that wind field will also expand as the structure expands. Even if it's only, 50, 60 miles off the coast, you're very likely to potentially see hurricane force winds there along the coast, maybe just inland.
Yeah, as that storm starts to move north, the wind field's going to have to expand just simply due to the conservation of vorticity. We see that happen all the time. Even right now with the hurricane hunters in the storm, we're starting to see some of the wind fields expanding a little bit. The pressure continues to fall, but the actual velocities aren't really coming up. And that's just a symptom of an enlarging wind field, and that's just going to continue to be more and more the case as the storm moves north. So the Hurricane Center forecast is for a 90-knot storm just south of Nags Head, Buxton, Outer Banks in general, and they don't really necessarily expect the pressure to come up or the storm to necessarily weaken, but they're anticipating a much larger wind field. So the pressure gradient relationship there is going to start to break down a little bit, and we're going to see the wind field expand a lot. I still think we're going to be dealing with a major hurricane.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
But even with that, I think most likely we're probably going to see it just stay offshore. The Europeans have been very insistent on that despite trending west. But I think there is 60 to 70% probability that somewhere is going to see hurricane force conditions on shore from the storm.
Mm-hmm. And again, U.S. landfall, definitely not out of the question. We're still, a day or two from really seeing if there's going to be any potential Florida landfall. I feel like that's going to be really iffy, but I feel like the potential of maybe a Carolina landfall is a lot higher than a potential of a Florida landfall per se.
Yeah, there's probably around a 40 or 50% chance right now. It's close to a coin toss of this thing actually moving inland. It's going to be really a close shave regardless as that upper trough starts to swing down.
Yeah.
Starts to swing down and impinges on that ridge. Historically, this time of year, early fall, moving into October, troughs tend to show up on the models as too strong and too far east. So we kind of think that maybe that trend westward might be a real trend. Maybe something that actually happens in reality and not just in computer model guidance. So it's going to be a close shave. I don't think anyone's going to know for sure this thing is going to plow into, say, Charleston until maybe as much as 36 hours ahead of time. And yeah, that's still 3 or 4 days away even. So a lot of uncertainty with the storm, but I think we're starting to hone in on a solution that's going to be a big problem for a lot of people. And I'm probably if the Florida solution starts to look more plausible, I'll probably leave here in Mississippi and head that way tomorrow afternoon. Looking like a Carolina solution, I'll be leaving Wednesday morning.
Okay, awesome. Well, if it's a Carolina solution, I have to work on Friday, unfortunately, but I'll be definitely headed out Friday right after work. So who knows? Maybe I'll see you out there somewhere. So definitely keep in touch with me, man.
Maybe. If any of you guys or anyone watching, is making attempts to try to chase a storm, keep in mind that I think it was Irene chopped the Outer Banks in half, and it took some time before the ferries could get into service. So if anyone's considering going out there, you should probably be aware that you could be out there.
You could be out there for a week or so. Absolutely, yeah. So
it wouldn't even be that much of. And if you haven't chased a hurricane on the Outer Banks, do be sure that you're there early, because you're going to want to recon the area. I was there for Arthur, and I think it was a strong Category 2 storm at the time of landfall, and it did tear off some bridges and whatnot. And if this is a major hurricane, it's just going to be that much worse. So everybody just had to be prepared for that.
Yeah, I mean, Jesse, good to have you with us. Glad you finally made it in here. So this is really awesome. I am really glad about that. But I feel like I feel like the intensity forecast post Bahamas has gone up. It's been trending upwards. A stronger hurricane, Category 3. Seems pretty likely going forward, and then once it makes landfall, weakening. But I wouldn't be surprised to see, a Category 3 hurricane, somewhere along the Carolina coast or very near the Carolina coast.
I think that's entirely possible. You guys can check out my thoughts on the WX Chasing blog. It's a Facebook page as well as a website if you want to go check that out. But my thinking is that the Hurricane Center tends to follow their TVCN guidance. So kind of a consensus model. They've acknowledged they're a little bit higher than that, and with good reason, because a lot of the models that are dragging down that consensus post-Bahamas are some of our not-so-good models. So the models that maybe aren't so good at forecasting tropical weather. Older models in particular, L-bar, ships, that kind of thing.
Yep.
But where your more reliable guidance, your globals, your tropical mesoscale models, they're higher, and considerably so. The GFS shows strengthening to possibly as low as 931 millibars last time I checked. And even though the wind field will be larger, and so it wouldn't be, you can't think, oh my gosh, it's Category 4 now at 940, what's it going to do at 934? Wouldn't necessarily be the same, but that's still a major hurricane. And almost every, no matter how you look at it, that's going to have winds probably around 100 knots, maybe a little more.
I was going to say winds will definitely be probably over 110 miles an hour or so still. Yeah. I mean, the HWRF has it 951 even approaching Wilmington, North Carolina. The GFDL really is an interesting model. I don't know if you've taken a look at the latest run of that, but it has it at 924 millibars off of the east coast of Florida, there around the Cape Canaveral area, due east of there. So
that wouldn't be unrealistic. We're talking about very low, very slow, and not really defined steering currents, and what that means in large part is there's probably not going to be a lot of shear around either. We can look at the hurricane right now and see that it's kicking out some arc clouds to the west. That indicates a little bit of dry air, but knowing where it's at now and then comparing that to points northward, the really only, pause to strengthening is going to be land. And once it crosses land and gets into the Bahamas, which as far as hurricanes concerned, they don't really exist. Yeah. They're so small. Once it gets into the Bahamas, sky's the limit in large part. We'll just have to see. I still expect, like I said, a major hurricane.
Yeah, the
And
Bahamas are not a very disrupting factor for hurricanes. I mean, looking back
no,
in
certainly not.
history.
No, certainly not. They're just little specks of land, and the hurricanes don't really notice them or seem not to. And if you look at the heat content of the ocean actually goes up the further north the storm gets. So, and there's a very high anomalously warm sea surface temperatures off the southeast coast of Florida. So, as we get closer, there's really, like I said, not a whole lot of things that we see are going to start to make this thing weaken. I mean,
right now, looking here at the latest official forecast cone from the National Hurricane Center, SPC still has it as a major hurricane by 2 p.m. Friday, and dropping down to a hurricane by 2 p.m. Saturday. Now, I wouldn't be surprised to see in later forecasts, if once it gets out north of Cuba and we really get a good handle on this thing, that changes from being just a regular old hurricane on 2 p.m. Saturday to being a major hurricane on Saturday. It really depends on how much mountainous terrain it goes over, how long it takes to get over that mountainous terrain, and different variables like that. I want to give Dan, Sarah, Steven, Jesse, you guys have any questions or thoughts concerning what we're seeing here with Hurricane Matthew? I mean, this is definitely could be pretty historic. The last time a major hurricane made landfall in Florida was, like 10, 12 years ago?
2004.
Yeah, 2004. So 12 years ago. I mean, so even if this doesn't make direct impact in Florida, depending on how far that wind field expands and how strong it is off the coast, there is a possibility that they could experience, major hurricane strength winds along the immediate coast. Very, very possibly.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are your thoughts, Dan?
Well, you guys are doing such a good job of covering it. You know more about it than I do. I'm just going. Sounds good.
So, Logan, tell us a little bit, a little bit more about yourself. How long you've been chasing for? A little bit more about wxchasing.com.
Sure. I graduated in 2013 as a meteorologist from the University of South Alabama. Then proceeded to go to Jacksonville State University and picked up a master's degree in emergency management. I've been chasing tornadoes and hurricanes really since 2009, so haven't had a whole lot of opportunity to do that. I've seen hundreds of tornadoes, but only maybe 5 or 6 different hurricanes. So we've been at it for a while. wxchasing.com is a partnership between myself and Mr. Brandon Clement, and I kind of work as the meteorologist there. And while he does quite a bit more chasing than I'm able to, but that's kind of what we do. Tropical meteorology is definitely what got me into weather, so it's definitely my passion. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if I've told you this, but I actually used to live in Miami, Florida for about 8 years almost. So, I mean, I went through at least a dozen or so tropical storms, hurricanes down there, went through Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Wilma, of course. The eye of it went right over our house at about 120 miles an hour. Had an embedded tornado and it just destroyed our entire backyard. So that was definitely something else. And here's one of my fellow classmates that I went to Penn State with, Joey Curtis. He's now at Mississippi State studying meteorology, where I'll be also starting this coming fall. So he got the little jump start on me. So it's awesome. So Logan, what year did you graduate?
I graduated as a meteorologist in 2013, and I graduated my master's in emergency management in 2015.
So what made you decide to do meteorology as your bachelor's and not continue on with a master's in it, but rather do a master's in emergency management?
Well, it's an interesting story. Like I said, I started chasing storms a lot in 2009. After I graduated meteorology school, I was kind of, directionless. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to chase storms. So hooked up with a few guys, and one of the first big storms we chased was the Mayflower Bologna tornado, I believe, in 2013. Kind of wrecked that part of town near Little Rock. And it was well forecasted. It was a high-risk day by SPC. We knew there was going to be a problem. It almost busted. It's getting close to dark. We don't see anything. Then all of a sudden, one little lone storm develops southwest of Little Rock, starts to move towards town, and it's just got the entire atmosphere at its disposal and just drops this a monster wedge. Ends up getting rated EF4, kills a bunch of people. It was just bad. There was nothing positive about it. But as I'm standing there in the middle of the highway with vehicles strewn about, I realized that, my job is done. I forecasted it, and then what? I couldn't do anything else. So at that point, it became clear that I wanted to be able to expand my role within the community. So now, not only am I able to forecast, but I'm able to understand and help with the logistical and emergency management side of that. So that's kind of where I am.
Sound here, so I can't hear you guys right now. Oh man, hold on one second.
Turn the volume up, Joey.
Hey, how are you? I'm just learning how this is working.
Well, this is the EW
right back.
Party Hotline. Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Game
We
over.
lost the boss. Uh-oh, we lost the boss, man.
Game over, folks.
Hey, Logan. Logan,
Game over.
All right, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Game on.
Game over.
My audio, it just completely went out. I couldn't hear anything that was being said, so I'm like, I'm gonna have to refresh this. So, I totally missed half of your story there, Logan. I feel so bad.
I'll give you the short version. I saw a big tornado. It killed a bunch of people. I felt helpless. Decided I had to do more.
Gotcha.
Wow, that is the short version, Logan.
Hey, it's okay. This is I'll be able to just go back and watch it later, and just hear the whole version. So
Right.
But yeah,
That was awesome.
Yeah, definitely glad that you were able to join us tonight. So, Joey, I want to open up the floor to you, our freshman meteorologist there at Mississippi State University. So tell us what your thoughts are on Hurricane Matthew.
To be honest, I haven't spent a whole lot of time looking at it just because I've been so busy. But that trough that's located somewhere up in the middle portion of the country, it looks like that's going to play a major part on whether the hurricane's going to dig into the coast or the trough is going to take it out to sea. I guess the models have been really trending more inland today.
Definitely.
But what do you guys think? Because you guys are probably looking at it a lot more than me.
I mean, obviously, like you said, the models have been, trending more inland. We've seen it over the past day or two, really. Now, you just look at the current forecast cone. You have basically the eastern half of Florida now is entirely within the cone. Almost the eastern half of Georgia, all of South Carolina, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
It's really going to depend on the timing of the trough, honestly.
Yeah.
It's another interesting because that same trough is what's going to be producing our severe weather tomorrow out in Kansas and Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. So seeing how that all develops is definitely going to be another weather story we're going to have our eyes on. Tomorrow is going to be a really busy day weather-wise with its impacts across Cuba and coming into the Bahamas, the severe weather in the plains. It's going to be a very busy weather day tomorrow for sure.
But where's everybody located in this group?
All right, well, we'll work our way down the line. I'll start. I am in Atlanta, Georgia. Steven is in Great Falls, Montana. Sarah, where are you at?
I'm about 20 miles or so northwest of Indianapolis.
Indianapolis, Indiana. Logan.
I'm currently in Crystal Springs, Mississippi, which is very near Jackson.
Okay, so we got 2 folks in Mississippi. Jesse.
Oh, sorry.
I'm like, we get to Jesse. She's like, what am I supposed to say?
I'm in Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
All the hard questions.
Joey, you are in
Burn.
Starkville, Mississippi. David's up in Cincinnati, Ohio area. And Dan, you are in
Elkhorn, Wisconsin.
Elkhorn. I knew it was somewhere in Wisconsin. I couldn't remember the exact area. So that's where we're all from. This is the most people we've ever had on a Stormcast. It's awesome. We need to have this like every night. Just so you guys know, we usually do these on Sunday nights, not Monday nights typically, around 10 o'clock Eastern. So you're always welcome to tune in. Look, guys, got those little Wisconsin Badgers background and everything. So,
And this
Ohio State's going to have to bring it.
and
we're
this
going to win.
broadcast is brought to you by Mountain Dew.
Do the do.
You guys still do the radio?
Go ahead, Jess. I'll let you answer that question.
Right now, no, but at some point here in the near future, we will be having that back.
Okay, so that was always cool.
It was, yeah, that was pretty awesome. But Dan can tell you about something new we do have.
Ah, yes, the forums. We have a brand new EWV forum. You can link to it right from the website, extremeweathervideos.com. And it's right on the top under Interact. Click on Forums. It'll take you to a brand new page. Just sign up there. All you need is an email, and you are on the forum. So you can keep track and keep up with everything that's been going on right on there.
Yeah, for sure. And Logan, we're definitely going to have to like link swap or something like that with WX Chasing and Extreme Weather Videos. That would be for sure. I don't know.
We can make that happen.
Yeah, we need to make that happen for sure. I'll just have to talk to Brandon. I don't know if are you the website admin or is Brandon kind of the one that does that?
He owns the website, but I do most of the posting and management.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, if you ever get,
So I can do whatever we need to do.
awesome. That would be great. We'll definitely put you up. That would be great to get you as under our affiliates or partners, whatever you want to call it. I don't care.
I will say with a storm coming in, I mean, the 2 biggest things to watch is land interaction. Where exactly does this thing pop off on top of the Cuban coast? Because, 10, 12 miles is going to make a huge difference.
Oh, yeah, especially with the mountains there?
Absolutely.
I mean, if it's going over 3,000-foot mountains versus 7,000-foot mountains, I mean.
And it's going to come off wobbly. It's not going to be happy about it, that's for sure. And it may come off 10 miles further west than track or 10 miles further east than track. We don't know yet. And, in addition to that, the forward speed is going to be important. And I know a lot of people –
over the land.
I know a lot of people have talked about, the strength of that trough coming in and the timing and things like that. Well, even perhaps at this stage of the game, more importantly is what's the orientation of that trough? Because we're pretty confident now this thing's going to end up some 15, 50, 75 miles off the east coast of Florida. It's coming in pretty close. So what's going to matter at that point for points north of there is going to be what's the storm motion. And that comes down to more about the deep layer wind flow as opposed to just how fast the trough gets there. So if it comes in extremely positively tilted, you have strong southwest to northeast flow. If it comes in fairly neutral, even negative, you have south to north flow, or maybe even southeast to northwest flow, and that's going to tend to pull it in further. So we need to start watching for what we really want to see for a big landfall. You want to see that trough slowing down, but coming in deeper. The deeper it is out over the Four Corners and Rocky Mountain region, the higher tendency we're going to have for wind flow to be out of the south or southeast to steer this thing into land. So if you're a proponent of a big landfall, that's what you're looking for. You want to see the thing start to slow down. You want to see that trough continuing to dig. Right now that's been the trend, but we're not really sure if that's what's going to happen yet. So like I said, more than maybe the trough intensity, trough orientation, does that thing dig and start to become neutral or negative tilt or not as it approaches the East Coast?
Okay, for those that may not know what neutral or negative tilt is, Can you kind of explain? I mean, I know myself, Joey probably knows that, but for some of our viewers that watch, kind of just describe what the difference between a neutral trough is and a negative tilt trough is.
Sure. The tilt of the trough is just how much north to south is it. If it's perfectly vertical, say the trough looks like a perfect U shape, then that's a neutral tilt trough. If the bottom, the southern portion of the trough, is further right than the northern portion of the trough, it's tilted kind of backwards. It's a negative tilt. If the bottom of the trough is further west than the top part of the trough, tilt. And as you can imagine, that dictates the flow around it. If it's tilted more from northwest to southeast, then the flow around the right hand side of that is going to be southeast to northwest as well, which is going to pull that storm inland. So what you don't want to see if you're looking for a big landfall is for the trough to speed up and for it to be tremendously positively tilted. And that's what the Euro had shown for days. It was positively tilted to neutral tilt, very broad based. And so you had significant west to east flow beneath that trough, and that just kicked it straight due east. And the trend, even in the Euro now, has been for that trough to be slower, a little deeper, and to allow that the wind vector to be more onshore for the Carolina region. So that's what we're looking at. So those are probably the 2 or 3 things that I would say we need to start paying attention to the most over the next few days. Beyond that, who knows? I know that's what I'll be looking for on the 0Z runs here in the next little bit. What are they doing? What are the models doing with that trough coming into the Rockies? Are they deepening it, keeping it shallow? If it's really shallow, it's probably going to be a neutral tilt trough as it comes across the East Coast. Probably going to come up a little bit faster. A deeper a trough is, the slower it moves. So
it doesn't move as fast.
Right. So if it's shallower, then it's going to eject out faster, and that's going to help keep the storm out. So we want to continue to see a trend for that 500 to 300 millibar trough to be further west and deeper, and that's going to get you a much better chance of having that ridge build in even stronger on the East Coast to kick that storm.
Get it right up into inland.
Yep, that's right.
One of our viewers asked a question: could hurricane force winds affect Florida's western coast?
That's a little bit tricky. I would say the chances of that happening are probably less than 5%, less than 1 in 20 at this point.
Yeah, I was looking at the NHC's hurricane force wind speed probabilities, and as of right now, they don't even have a 5% risk area there for the West Coast. So.
And I wouldn't be surprised because say the storm does truck it into, I don't know, Cape Canaveral. By the time it gets to the West Coast, I mean, the winds at that point may have diminished to beneath hurricane force.
Yeah, because you have to think about the land interaction that the winds have to undergo too, coming across there.
So if the storm did happen to move directly across, which isn't in the forecast, mind you, but even if it did, it's probably going to be weakening to minimal or maybe even tropical storm force by the time it reaches the West Coast.
But excellent question. Thank you, Mary, for that. So.
Right. So if you're on the West Coast, I would say, be prepared, be aware. If it does make that far western track that some of the models are showing, not the forecast, but a possibility, then very heavy rain, gusts, tropical storm force, and possibly an embedded tornado. This is a tropical system, so you're not out of the woods. You need to definitely pay attention, but certainly not really anticipating true hurricane conditions in that part of the country.
Yeah, I mean, my sister actually lives in Tampa, Florida area, so I'm sure I'll be getting reports from her and seeing what conditions are like there on the West Coast. But, you mentioned something that I think is another thing that hasn't really been discussed a whole lot, honestly, and that is the storm surge threat for the East Coast. Again, that could really have significant impacts, even if the storm doesn't make any sort of U.S. landfall. We could still see some pretty significant storm surge along the east coast of Florida, up into the coastal portions of Georgia, South Carolina, especially when we get that onshore flow on the northern side of the storm.
Right.
We could really see that water pile up.
I think that's almost a foregone conclusion at this point. There's not much that makes us think the storm's not going to move into the Bahamas. And once that happens, it's going to start piling up water. It's going to start creating a wave hazard. So I'd say with near certainty, there's going to be increased tides, increased water action, increased wave action along Florida's east coast, South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina. That's almost going to happen, almost with near certainty. We just, at this point, we're mostly discussing how much. I would say probably not a great idea to be on the east coast of Florida in about 4 days out on a fishing boat.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, they already have a couple special marine warnings out there. I see on Jesse's radar there in the Miami area.
Surfing conditions should be improving.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I'm sure there'll be a lot of surfers out there. It's going to be pretty wild. I wouldn't be surprised to see, here even in the next 3 or 4 days on the east coast of Florida, significant wave heights approaching 15 feet, 20 feet even. So
yeah. And you have to remember the general elevation of Florida is anywhere from 3 to 6 feet above sea level. So I mean, it depending on how close this thing tracks to Florida, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of coastal flooding, anywhere from Cape Canaveral south toward Miami. I mean, just like up and down the entire East Coast, man.
I have little doubt that's going to happen. It's very difficult for it not to at this point. Even if the storm doesn't move within 100 miles of the coast, it's going to happen.
Just think of how the size of the storm too, especially if this thing really, once it gets north of Cuba, balloons out, and you get all that deep tropical moisture just coming in for 24, 36 hours over some of the same areas. It's going to be this time. I mean, the Florida governor already declared a state of emergency, so I mean they're taking it seriously, which I think is good.
And how fast is this thing moving? 5 miles an hour? That's what it was yesterday?
Currently,
between 5 and 7,
yeah, it's still 5 miles an hour north right now.
I believe it's between 5 and 7, last I checked. And that forward motion should pick up a little bit.
Yeah, right now northeast at 8 miles per hour, pressure 934 millibars. So we've seen that pressure drop again a little bit.
The hurricane hunters measured the 934 about 50 minutes an hour ago, maybe now.
Yeah.
And that's, like I said, it's not terribly surprising. It's undergoing an eyewall replacement cycle right now. And about 3 hours ago, you could see that beginning on the Jamaican radar. As that happens, the wind fields are going to expand dramatically. You're going to see the eye expand in size dramatically. So pressures are going to continue to fall, but maybe not see the winds pick up just yet. Technically a strengthening storm, much larger storm. The wind fields are probably going to be double what they are now in about 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, I mean that's the one thing that's really concerning with this whole thing is that expansion of the wind. I mean, so far it's been fairly compact. I mean, hurricane force winds have only been extending like 30, 40 miles out from the center, but I mean, this thing really expands. I mean, we could see those hurricane force winds very well possibly over 100 miles out from the center.
I would not be surprised at all, particularly on the east side. The west side, if you're probably going to see maybe 75 miles. East side probably closer to 100, but wouldn't surprise me at all.
So excellent. I mean, I'm looking at some of the wind. I'm not sure if you guys have gone on National Hurricane Center, seen the latest wind probabilities. They have like all the different locations and the forecast hours, so you can literally look up what are the wind speed probabilities for in knots at a specific time frame. So I mean, even inland, I mean, you're gonna have gusty winds. I mean, even here in Atlanta, Georgia, when that thing's going by, we'll probably have 20, 25 mile an hour winds coming around from the northeast as it's passing by. So
I wouldn't be surprised at all if you start to have some kind of influence well inland from that storm. Atlanta, getting on the edge of influence for a hurricane there. You may be actually in the area of subsidence where you're getting more calm winds just because the air is sinking so much over there. But it's on that cusp of being within that large cyclonic envelope of the hurricane. So would not surprise me at all if there's 20, 25 mile per hour gusts out of the north or northeast as the storm exits to the north and east.
Yeah, we're just about now 50 minutes away from getting the 11 p.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center. So the 11 p.m. advisory, usually you can get a lot of good information out of that. It's one of the full advisories. They'll come out with their latest discussion. So I'm definitely going to be interested to see what they have for that as their latest discussion for sure, especially over the next 48 hours. Thoughts and prayers definitely going out to folks in Haiti, Cuba, Jamaica. Really kind of dodged the bullet. I mean, they were really under the gun there. I mean, Eastern Jamaica still definitely could see significant impacts, but the wind threat for Jamaica looks like definitely not as significant as it was forecast to be, since they're on the western side of the storm, and the wind field's still pretty small right now. But again, hurricane warnings still out for all of eastern Cuba, Haiti, central and most of the southern Bahamas. Hurricane watches for northern Bahamas, central Cuba. Question, when do you think we could see, do you think the 11 p.m. advisory, we may start seeing some sort of watch or warning for southeastern Florida?
That's entirely possible. In their last update, they mentioned that watches may be necessary tonight, and that would be the update that they came out. I kind of think maybe they'll hold off a little bit given the forecast uncertainty. There's still plenty of time to do it in the morning should they so choose. So that's probably what they'll end up doing, but it would not surprise me if they issued some hurricane watches up for portions of the East Coast.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if not tonight, I could definitely see them getting some watches out by tomorrow morning, 5, 8 a.m. around then. So, but Jesse, Sarah, Dan, comments, thoughts, questions? I know me and Lo kind of and I know you guys are just kind of absorbing all this information.
I think I'm kind of at the point where, okay, if I'm down in southern Florida, particularly along the East Coast, and I need a official watch issued in order for me to become aware of it, I have other problems.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, having lived in Miami for 8 years, it really does take a hurricane watch of that sort to kind of really get anyone's attention. I mean, right now, they're probably, just going around their usual business, enjoying their days as normal. It's not really till the hurricane watch that's when, maybe we should fill up the car with gas. Let's make sure, we have some water and stuff like that. It's just going to brush by us, I'm
just looking at it from like someone who doesn't know a whole lot about hurricanes, but it's like, okay, we have tornado watches, and those get put out when we think we might get one for a very relatively small area, but yet we need a watch for a gigantic storm that is probably going to hit, and it's just a matter of time before it gets there, but let's put out the official watch first.
Well, from an institutional perspective, there are a lot of activities regarding emergency management activities, EMAs, local EMAs, state EMAs that perhaps won't go into effect without that watch being issued. So it does have some, logistical importance for what sort of actions happen. Mm-hmm. So it is important still. I completely understand what you're saying. I mean,
I know, but if I'm just watching my TV and I'm at home in Florida and I knew nothing else about weather, I'm looking, oh, look at all those swirling colors on the radar headed towards my way. It probably means something.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that most people down there, I'm already getting a lot of phone calls and whatnot, are aware of the situation, but I think things will hit a whole other level for them once the watch is issued.
Yeah. But I do enjoy listening to the science behind it all, and what can affect it from going this direction versus that direction. But
right,
it's going to be a serious situation, and if you're anywhere near that area, like I said last night on yesterday's StormCast, just be prepared. Don't wait for an official watch.
Dan, we live in the Midwest, darling. Nothing happens here.
I know. Well, you were taking a canoe back and forth to where you were going earlier last week.
I wasn't taking a canoe. I was taking
you could have.
a WV submersible. There's a difference.
Okay, Uber launched a boat service. I mean,
I was using the submersible last week.
Okay.
No, speaking of which, did you put that back in port?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Did you clean out all the Mountain Dew bottles?
Yes, I cleaned all the Mountain
Not
Dew
like
bottles
last
out of
time.
it.
Logan, as you can tell, we're really like family here. So
Oh, and
I can see
I
that.
restocked the fridge.
Oh, cool.
so
But,
I mean, one other thing I want to talk about that is definitely concerning to me as well. How many of you guys remember that whole South Carolina flooding event that we had a couple months ago?
Vaguely, yeah, I remember it.
Yeah, remember that?
A
you mean
little.
a
Yeah.
year ago?
It was that tropical moisture that just kind of streamed northward
I believe
forever.
that was last year, wasn't it? Joaquin?
Joaquin?
Yep, that was with Joaquin last year.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about sometimes you'll have these storms move through, and then you'll have these after effects almost, where the tail end of the storm stretches for 500 miles, and you just get this constant rain, and the storms are already gone through. I mean, that would really be something that
I don't know if we're necessarily looking at something like that. We had a little bit of almost an atmospheric river set up there where we had an upper level low that was parked over the southeastern United States, and you had Joaquin that was chilling over the Bahamas, and all the models except for the Euro brought it inshore, but that never happened. But what did happen is that upper level low kind of sucked all of Joaquin's moisture consistently. The tropical systems typically exist in an envelope of high precipitable water. So you can see them on microwave imagery often having an envelope or a circle or as some places call them a pouch of high precipitable water. And that upper level trough that just was stuck over the southeastern United States just streamed and kind of sapped all of it off the top of it consistently to the north and west. And we don't really have a strong upper trough sitting over, say, Georgia or Alabama right now. The storm should be fairly progressive off the East Coast. It's going to either It's going to either recurve or move eastward again off after making impact. So I don't know that we're going to see tremendous long duration flooding unless the storm itself were to stall, which is plausible, but not looking likely right now. The biggest effects from the storm probably are going to be storm surge on the coastal areas and possibly high winds, but definitely stressing the storm surge concern at this point.
What about the northeast impacts? I mean, once let's say it does make landfall somewhere along the Carolina coast, comes off the coast. I mean, some people are like, "Oh, is this going to be the next Hurricane Sandy?" Or, I mean, what are your thoughts on northeast impacts?
Right, and we talked about earlier about trough orientation, the tilt, neutral, positive, negative. To get something that kind of slingshots into New England a la Sandy, you really need a strongly negatively tilted trough. It's got to be tilted in such a way that as the storm comes around the base of the trough, it has to get kind of slingshotted northwest back into New England. And that's not looking like it's going to happen. It's still within the realm of possibility. There's a reason that Sandy was a once in however many 300, I believe, year storm, they called it, because it's rare. It's not impossible. You just have to have the exact strength and exact correct timing and exact tilt for that to happen, because it's very hard for that storm to get captured within that trough. It really wants to just jump off northeast, but it's plausible. We shouldn't write it off yet. I would say interest in New England should pay attention, but don't raise the alarm just yet. There's no real reliable guidance at the moment that's showing that solution.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously right now the model's anything really beyond 120 hours. Typically, it's really hard to really trust anything beyond 120 hours. I mean, because then it just really you get solutions all over the place. But definitely.
How many of you guys know what the average National Hurricane Center track error at 120 hours is?
Isn't it like 200 miles or something like that?
230 miles.
Yeah, I knew it was just over 200.
At 5 days. That's insane.
Yeah.
That's a huge possibility. So New England effects, we're talking, 6-7 days out, which if the Hurricane Center made a forecast that far out, you're talking maybe a 350-mile error average. So still tremendous amount of time on the clock left. The only thing we're really confident at this point is that this thing will move northwest in the Bahamas towards land, and that we can't rule out land impact. So that's going to be the biggest, talking points for the next day or so. And I think you're going to see the entire southeastern U.S. coast in a hurricane cone from the Hurricane Center for the next 2 days at least. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, for sure. Dan, I totally just saw your comment there. He said, if we don't want a storm of biblical proportion, can we stop naming them after disciples? Excellent question.
You have to take that up with the WMO, the World Meteorological Organization.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're not really the ones that come up with the list of names, but it is kind of
for conversation in the chat.
Kind of ironic that it is, named Matthew, and this isn't, one of the other names. I don't know what the name is.
If next year's that rolls through as a Category 5 and they name it Mark, there's a conspiracy.
That would be terrible. Hurricane Jesus.
Okay, have you, Logan? Have you seen that other disturbance that's out in the Atlantic that now has a 60% chance of tropical cyclone formation?
Yeah, that little sucker is a problem.
Yeah.
It's developing basically up under the upper ridge that's steering Matthew, which makes sense. That's generally a favorable position for a hurricane development. Very low shear up under those ridges. But as it develops, if it gets deep enough, it's going to weaken that ridge. If it stays far enough east, it may strengthen the ridge to its west. So,
I mean, that could very well have an impact on where Matthew
absolutely,
goes.
and it may already be having an impact as it's a relative weakness in the flow that's north of the storm. So if it stays relatively weak, we can be fairly confident that our guidance has a good idea what's going on. But if this thing strengthens rapidly for whatever reason, which is not forecast, no models are showing that, but were it to rapidly intensify, become a tropical storm and potentially a hurricane, that would have amazing effects on Matthew. May even undergo some Fujiwara interaction.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Go.
That's totally David's echo.
We got an echo in here.
Okay, it should be gone now. That's because he's not wearing headphones. I'm pretty sure, something like that. But yeah, it's rare, but there are times in history where we've seen different tropical cyclones actually rotate around each other. The Fujiwara effect that you're mentioning. I remember learning that in my tropical forecasting class. That would definitely be something pretty cool to see.
If assuming the little orange blob that's out there right now were to develop and stays northeast of Matthew as we're expecting, it would tend, in a Fujiwara interaction, it would tend to slow it down and possibly shunting it off to the south and west. So not exactly favorable if you want to avoid a landfall. Doesn't really help you much there.
Yeah, exactly.
Those interactions rarely result in strengthening, though. So it may be an issue of, okay, is this going to impede development? So we may have that going for us if we're development.
One reason I brought that up is because some people have asked me, "Oh, are those two systems going to merge?" I'm like, no,
not exactly.
not really. It doesn't really work that way.
Over time, they would probably consolidate into an extratropical cyclone.
Yeah,
but they certainly would not merge as tropical entities. As they start to spiral into each other, they acquire some extratropical characteristics. No known cases of two tropical systems spiraling into another tropical system. So I don't think that would be what would happen. I don't ever like to say never, but typically what happens when those start to spiral in a Fujiwara interaction is they become an extratropical cyclone.
Excellent. Well, yeah, definitely appreciate. I'm sure everyone's like, wow, getting some great insight here. David, you have a question? You're muted there, my friend, so you can unmute yourself and ask your question. I saw you waving at me.
Yeah, what about Miami? Daytona and all that. Or I got a friend that's headed down there this weekend.
South Florida, we can't write out yet. I would say chances maybe 20% in that area of a direct impact up to hurricane force. I'm probably going to pass just east of there. I just had someone from West Palm ask me about that a little while ago. At this stage of the game, what you probably want to do is your very first preliminary preparation.
You want to all that ready, you know.
Get some dry foods, get some canned foods, things that you can eat anyway, and start to kind of lower the amount of frozen or refrigerated goods you have in your storage. So maybe meal plan some spaghetti and meatballs. Should you have some hamburger meat chilling in there or something? So that's kind of what you want to do now. Just things that don't necessarily impact your day-to-day life. Should the storm move off, you don't want to have done something that's going to have wasted a bunch of time. You can replace that hamburger meat. You will eat those pork and beans or whatever it is you bought. But really, at this point for South Florida, I would not say panic or jump to a landfall conclusion, because it's probably not going to be the case for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I'll tell you this little story. When we lived in Miami and we saw a hurricane coming or whatever, what we would do is we would stuff our freezers with food, with like steaks and ice cream and stuff like that, set it on like as cold as it could go. So when we lost power, we had our grill and we had like 2 or 3 propane tanks, and we just roll it out on the back patio after the hurricane, and like the whole neighborhood will come out and, have dinner with it. It was really something. Everyone else was like eating their little, MREs or whatever. And we're like having a buffet out there. It was great.
Hey, that works for about 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
And then your refrigerated stock is going to have been diminished. So, for the most part, you can have enough. You can. I'm not saying empty your freezer or fridge, but kind of bring the amounts of food down in there and make sure most of what you have is going to be sustainable, because you could be without power for a couple of weeks even should that storm hit you.
Yeah, I mean, when Hurricane Wilma went through, we were without power for nearly 2 weeks
Right.
down here in South Florida, and that wasn't even a direct landfall. It made landfall along the West Coast and moved across the state. Still knocked out power, did a lot of damage, and some places were without power 3 weeks. The recovery took quite some time. I mean, Wilma down there, I mean, we had 17 palm trees in our backyard that it took down. Palm trees we're talking about here. Just knocked them down, laying flat on the ground on the driveway. So, I mean, and that was only, 110, 115 mile an hour winds by the time it was over southeast Florida. It was like Category 2, something like that. So, and Dan and Jesse, you guys are going crazy over there with these little jokes of yours.
Sorry, I'm not trying to be distracting from the conversation.
It's really funny. It really is.
One thing that's kind of important to touch on, and I think it's important particularly because we haven't really had a strong hurricane impact the United States in some time, really since '08. The National Hurricane Center warns these hurricanes based on sustained winds.
Yeah, they forget
they have much higher gusts. People, try to compare them to tornadoes or whatever and say, oh, this is F2 tornado. It has winds to 130. That must be like a Category 3 hurricane. Well, not exactly. The problem with that is that tornadoes are typically based on the gusts they produce. So you're talking, maybe a 15-second sustained wind versus a 1-minute sustained wind, or even a 3-minute sustained wind in a hurricane. So keep in mind, as we talk about these hurricanes, and we mentioned, winds up to 110, 150 miles per hour. That's a sustained wind. That's the wind that's steady. There's going to be winds at a 115 mile per hour hurricane that are gusting to 140, maybe, and it's really the gust that does the damage. Sustained winds can cause stress on property, but if we're talking about wind damage, it's really the gusts. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Comparing a lot of people compare tornadoes. Like said, hurricanes. You could have a Category 1 hurricane that has 75 mile per hour winds, However, if you have 75-mile-per-hour winds blowing on a, maybe a not well-built structure for, say, 8 hours, it can do a lot of damage, almost, the same amount of damage that, a pretty strong tornado can do in 15 seconds. So you also think of the duration of the event. Same thing with the rainfall. The duration of and the amount of rain that a place gets could lead to flooding, whereas if Matthew moves quicker and, you don't have rain falling for as long, then, your flooding impacts may not be as high.
And the rainfall adds to the wind effect for a lot of structures. As the ground becomes saturated, and it's going to weaken a lot of your structure. So your trees are going to come down easier. Most of your things that are driven into the ground are going to have a tendency to tip, simply because the ground is a lot weaker when it's wet. So all these things come together to make a hurricane a lot more dangerous than a lot of people think. We haven't had a big one in a while. People are going to be caught off guard next time we have a major hurricane come inland, and it's going to be bad. And it might be in a few days. So as many people as we can warn that these are the strongest storms on the planet, and they've earned that by a large margin. It's not even close. So we really have to give them the respect they deserve.
Yeah, for sure. So
Sorry.
no problem, Jesse. No problem. Well, it's definitely going to be a busy day tomorrow. In what Matthew does, I really feel that by tomorrow night, we really should be able to determine whether this is going to be a Florida storm or if it's going to be a Carolina storm by tomorrow night into Wednesday, once we get it into the Bahamas. And again, seeing what that ridge does, definitely.
I'm not sure I'll be that optimistic that we know exactly where it's going by tomorrow evening, but I would say we should be at least more confident of whether it's going to miss everything completely.
Yeah, that's
at minimum, we should be able to either say, okay, this is going to most likely miss the U.S., or it's most likely going to hit somewhere. Right now, it's about 50-50. Hopefully, we'll have some clarity by tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, want to thank everyone. Any other questions, Sarah? Dan, Jesse, David, Sarah, you've been kind of quiet over there.
Well, yeah, I just had a comment for Logan. I guess he does a great job at illustrating what I don't know. Logan, I haven't met you yet.
Hello.
My passion is really tornado and thunderstorms. Living here in Indianapolis, we obviously just don't get the hurricane activity.
I was in Kansas for a while, so I can feel it.
Okay. But one thing you mentioned in talking about your background was how your passion kind of developed into the emergency management side of it, and it really reminded me of something I brought up in the last StormCast that we did, and that is that I photograph so many storms that there's some guilt that comes with doing that, because you're out taking pictures and having fun with these storms, and it's matter of factly the same storms that can cause heartbreak for other people. And so that led me to working with the Red Cross, and so I think that you and I have something in common in that regard, and so that was fun to hear.
I mean, I was basically a full-time chaser for about a year, and my paycheck was entirely 100% dependent on bad things happening to good people.
Yeah.
And I could not do that any longer. So, I still chase, but I feel a moral obligation to offset with that with as much community effort as I can. I think every chaser out there has an obligation to the people that what their enjoyment is stemming from is causing pain. So we all have to continue to strive to place ourselves in a position to make what we do for the greater good, as opposed to being just a thrill-seeking endeavor.
Yep, absolutely. So thank you for what you brought to the table tonight. It was very informative.
Yeah.
Sure.
I wanted to ask you, is there a specific group that you're working with doing emergency management, or are you more independent, or what exactly is your role that you're doing right now?
Most of my work has been independent. I worked as a meteorologist for help disaster management for a while. I developed some disaster management plans for various private businesses. So some groups that maybe they're wondering maybe they can be better prepared or whatever. I'll develop their disaster preparation plans and things of that nature. So not working too much with any one agency right this moment, as I have in the past, but still continuing to try to do what I can at the time.
Awesome. Well, I want to let everyone know that we're going to be probably doing another Stormcast again tomorrow night, probably around 9:30 again. So be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on our Facebook page, look for updates on that. We'll get the exact time out to you probably by tomorrow afternoon. Get another really good look at, the latest on Hurricane Matthew. We should also, by then, I'm sure we'll start seeing what the exact impacts are across portions of Haiti and Jamaica as it makes its way across Haiti tonight into overnight and into the early morning hours tomorrow. So, definitely going to be a pretty dangerous situation down there, especially considering, it's nighttime. These folks, they can't really see the water and stuff like that. So definitely a very serious situation going to be down in Haiti tonight and overnight for sure.
Yep. And we got to remember those places don't necessarily have the best access to media.
Exactly. So I mean,
there's still even with all the warning, it's still going to catch some of those people off guard, and that's going to be very sad.
They don't get necessarily flash flood warnings like we do here in the United States, and stuff like that. So it's definitely going to be really
probably looking at tremendous loss of life there, and it's just heartbreaking, honestly.
Yeah, I mean they haven't even really fully recovered from the earthquake that they had a couple of years ago, and now having
2010.
Yeah, that was 2010. Having this come through on top of that, it's really just adding insult to injury, and going to be a really heartbreaking situation coming out of there, I'm afraid. We'll probably be seeing a lot of it on the news the next couple days.
Yeah, definitely. All right, folks. Well, I'm going to plug myself one more time. If you guys could go check out wxchasing.com.
Definitely do.
Find us on Facebook as well. I've got an update based on 12Z model runs this morning, which was kind of the first group that brought the storm closer to land. So if you want to check out what the more detailed thoughts, or at least to get a recap of what we talked about tonight, you can check there.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely do that. Logan, great having you on tonight. If you're available tomorrow, great. It would be great to talk more about this with you. Also, if you're going out, let us know. It'd be great to get you on for a few minutes, out in the field or whatever. So just let us all know, and we'll hope to see you again tomorrow night for Extreme Weather Videos and WXChasing.com. I'm Joey Pisani with Sarah, Logan, Jesse, David, and Dan. We will see you all tomorrow night. Have a great night, everyone, and stay safe out there.
Later.